Brother Scipius was more than just a big guardsman. I mean, sure, he did just carry a very large lasgun and a large bayonet, but he was more than just a big guardsman. Brother Reginald here. Melee tends to be something of a passion of mine, and I am something of an expert in it in Darktide, and seem to be doing just fine here in Space Marine 2. So today I will be presenting a quick tutorial on how to get good at melee, and it's not going to just be a bunch of me reading stats cards. You can get all the stats cards on the weapons in your own armory, and you can see the combos for each weapon inside the mission by hitting escape or start or whatever brings up your menu. That is it for the basics. Let's get into the good stuff. Number 1. Stacking and layering of executions and gun strikes. I mentioned this briefly in my last video on the assault class, and it applies everywhere. I mean, here's me clearing a ruthless mission with nothing but my Reen power sword. Anyway, this stacking and layering thing is probably my most important tip for good melee, since melee mostly involves figuring out how to sustain in melee. Stacking and layering is actually pretty simple. All I am talking about here is not just setting up and using an execution or gun strike the moment the opportunity presents itself in every situation, but instead saving them up as the battle goes and cashing them out, either all at once, in a sequence, or between short bouts of fighting. If you are fighting properly in a big messy melee, you will be delivering bits of damage to various enemies, not just one enemy over and over. Sure, it is possible and tempting at times to just focus down the warrior or chaos marine one by one, until all the big problems are handled. But the better play is to stack up damage on multiple of them, keeping loose track of how much damage you've stacked up while weaving in attacks on lighter enemies. Finally, when the moment is right, you might deliver a final smack against one of them and set them swaying. Knowing when the moment is right largely depends on how much health and armor you have, so if you are starting to lose armor in your fight is when you want to start cashing those in. But remember, you have a few seconds before they recover after you set an enemy swaying. Instead of just cashing in right away, you should try to kill a few more weaker enemies and hit that last guy 1 or 2 more times to set him swaying too. Then you move back to the first one just before he recovers and execute him. Then swing at a Minoris or 2, and then finish the second one. Maybe pick up a gun strike on something. The value here is that each one of these kills not only restores armor pips, but also provides AoE stagger on enemy attacks. This stagger can be huge for buying you time and space. That time gives you time to think, time to set up another advantageous attack, or even dodge out to a better position. This is stacking and layering. You stack up executions or stagger parry opportunities that you expect will come soon, then cash them out in layers between attacking other enemies. This keeps the enemy from overwhelming you and sets their tempo of attack to something you can manage. Number 2, positioning. Positioning is a critical thing in just about every game, but I can only say 2 things about it here that will be universal and helpful. Firstly, if you are surrounded, fight until you can dodge to a position that linearizes the enemy. Try to keep them kind of in front of you instead of all around you. Secondly, try to pay attention to your terrain and use large terrain pieces as cover to break line of sight with ranged enemies when you engage in a melee mosh pit. Sometimes shooting a few enemies to draw them closer is better than advancing to meet them in the open. The enemy has guns. Consider that seriously. Number 3, fight in every direction. I've said it in other places, I'm going to reinforce it here. You do not want to fight forwards in a pure line insofar as it is possible when you are surrounded. Instead, you need to recognize you are going to be surrounded almost always, this happens constantly, and you need to fight in every direction. You first attack this way, and then that way. Thrash about, dodge attack, and then parry the other direction. You should always be moving in one way or another to spread out what the enemy can do. Number 4, directionality of parry versus attack. This is kind of a little gotcha that is pretty critical to good melee flow. Parry aims in the direction of your camera. Attack does not. Attack aims in the direction of your character, which is defined by your thumbstick or keyboard controls. If you ever wonder why things suddenly feel disjointed, this would be the why. I mentioned it because it kept happening to me and it kept causing me problems because I'd be looking one way and attacking another and wondering what was going on. Parry is in the direction you were looking. Attack is in the direction your character is moving. Number 5. Parry and execution both provide AoE stagger around you, block does not. Gun strike is directional stagger in front of you. I've explained this in other places, I'm sure you're familiar with it by now, so we're done. Number 6, fighting Zangors is annoying. I have no special tricks for Chaos Space Marines other than keep moving and shoot the flamers. But for Zangors, you just need to remember that heavy attacks can punch through their shields, the same as Tyranid Warrior blocks. That's it. You have all the tools you need now. You know where to get the combos, you can test them yourself if you want, and you already know about parry, gunstrike, dodge, and execution. Those are the basics. I've given you a few key details and some ideas on how to use them. The rest is your reaction time and some practice. Good luck, brothers. I know the Emperor will favor your weapons. And thanks so much for visiting. Bye-bye.
Oh, brother!
No!